Okay, well, good. I'm glad you're here. Did you have a chance to read the book, David and Goliath?
Family?
Did you have a chance to read the book this month?
Yes. I read it 2 weeks ago.
Oh, good. Well, you're better.
I looked a little yesterday.
Okay, you reviewed it.
So I remember a little more.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah, you're better than I am. I read it before. Read it a couple of years ago, but then the last 3 days I read it again. I should read it further in advance, but life happens.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Glad to have you here. Yothi, are you there?
Good.
Yes. Hi, how are you?
Good, good. I'm glad you're here.
Yes, I just wanted to get part of the, not that I finished my book, but I got the gist of it. I want to get the feedback club, so I'll be prepared for women. But yeah, I'm here.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm glad you made it. And maybe the discussion today will motivate you to keep reading the book.
Exactly. I need that.
I know it's interesting because there's a little bit of a selfish reason why I do this book club too, is because I like to read, but it's hard to motivate myself to read consistently because of, life happens and things getting in the way. And so hopefully it's a double benefit for you all as well to have a little bit of a deadline.
Exactly. Yeah, but I really like your idea of this book club. Mm-hmm. Last time I was joined, but it was just for a few minutes. But this time I'll just stay for the whole thing and see exactly what we discuss on this and get to know, motivated.
Yes, perfect. Okay, good. And then we have, let's see, Victoria, you're here. Welcome back. Victoria, can you hear me okay? Oh, I don't think Victoria's microphone is on yet. Okay. We'll wait to have that. Carmen is here. Let's see, but she might not be in front of her computer quite yet. So Victoria, let's see, how can we get, I think Victoria's trying to connect again. We're just going to give a couple more minutes to make sure everybody can get get their system set up properly. And I know oh, who's there?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely. Here, hold on. The audio seems to be cutting a little bit. Is this Ada?
Oh, the voice.
So Ada, the audio is cutting.
Can you hear me?
Now I can. Okay, go ahead again.
My question is, what's the difference between the book club and the live webinar? It is the same or different?
Oh, those are different. Yeah, so we have study groups, which are the live webinar study groups. And those happen about twice a week. On Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we have those study group webinars. And those are for, as you go through the Pronunciation Pro course, as you have questions or you need feedback on your pronunciation and the things that you're learning through the course, you can come to those and ask questions to our trainers. So it's part of the course. Whereas the book club, it's just a fun extra thing that we do. And I don't give feedback on pronunciation or correct your English or anything like that during this. It's just an opportunity for us to get together and practice English and talk and discuss some of these ideas from the book. All right, good. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay. Gotcha, thank you.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I know last time when I shared my screen, I could only see a few people on the screen, and I didn't realize that more had shown up. So I'm going to kind of go back and forth between sharing my screen and looking at the attendees and making sure that I'm involving everyone as we go through here. So we don't want to leave anyone out. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my, and I do a little PowerPoint to keep, I want to keep things structured. Sometimes it's helpful to have a little bit of structure in these situations, but we don't have to stay to this structure at all. It's up to you how you want to do this. So we'll just kind of go with this and see how it goes. Victoria, I see that you're back. Can you hear me okay? Oh, maybe not quite yet. Okay, so our book today, or book this month, was called David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. And there is and it's touching on, and I'm actually gonna stay in this mode so I can go back and forth on the videos. Basically, this book is titled David and Goliath, and he talks about the biblical story of David and Goliath, but he puts it in context of, and uses some other case studies and some other real life examples, more modern day examples of how we see this David and Goliath dynamic in other situations. And when I mean David and Goliath dynamic, I mean the concept of an underdog. And I was just talking with Ada before we got started about what an underdog is. Does anybody know what an underdog is? That phrase, underdog, or that term, underdog? Have you heard that before?
One that's not so clever.
Have you, Sonia?
One that's not so clever.
Yeah, less clever. Okay.
Yeah, less clever.
Okay. And does anybody else have any understanding of underdog? Because I can expand on that. So Sonia, yeah, that concept of someone less clever, an underdog. That concept of underdog basically means someone who is not supposed to win. Where there is a situation where there's, so with David and Goliath, David is the underdog. You wouldn't think that David would win against Goliath. And David and Goliath, it's a biblical story about a shepherd boy who defeats this great giant, this warrior giant. And David is the underdog in this situation because he is not expected to win. He's not expected to be able to defeat this giant. And so you hear the term underdog frequently in sports analogies. So when the two different teams are against each other and one seems to be superior or better than the other, the weaker team is typically referred to as the underdog. And here in the U.S., and it might be the case, I'm sure it's probably the case other places, we love stories of the underdog. We love to hear stories about how the perceived weaker team or person or is able to overcome or overpower the more dominant team or person. So it's a really empowering type of a story. So we're going to go ahead and welcome to all those new who are coming in here. Hi, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, hello. My name is Victoria, and it's my second time in my club book. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, I didn't manage to read all book, but I read first part. after the story about David and Goliath. So I hope I'll able to discuss something.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll bring your thoughts and even your just your personal experiences into our discussion today. So that's awesome. Well, welcome. Let's see.
Thanks.
Do we have any others that have joined us since? Let's see. The unfortunate part of this is I can't see the names show up. But Carmen, I see you're here. Welcome. Okay, excellent. So feel free to speak up, and as I address or present questions, feel free to speak up and discuss. I will try and kind of elicit responses from you if I don't hear much from you. So we want to make sure that you have a chance to really practice your English and share your ideas. Okay?
Okay.
All right, excellent. Okay, so let me go ahead into so in this book, and whether you've read parts of it or none of it or all of it, let me kind of give a few themes that I was able to glean from this book. A big one for me was perspective. It's just that the concept of David and Goliath and what we perceive that story to be, he kind of challenges that perspective and saying it might not be what you think it was. Whether we agree with that, I mean, it's obviously his personal opinion about and his research, and I haven't looked into his research to see how valid everything is. It seems like it's reasonable, a reasonable argument that he uses with David and Goliath, but I think it challenges our perspective on situations and stories, especially these underdog situations.
I have one question before we move in.
Yeah.
I didn't understand in the end of the story about the David and Goliath that he told that all these years we didn't understand right this story, the right meaning of this story. I didn't understand what the main idea, why we thought something one and we should see the other picture. So as I see from the story and from his explaining, the same meaning that when the situation seemed like there is someone who is weak and there is someone who is very strong and weakly, so it's not supposed to be that weak will win, but in the end it what happened. And he said that it's not that we didn't understand in the right way this story all these years, and we didn't tell this story in right way to our children. So I didn't understand why we didn't understand it, why we understand it wrong and not right.
Okay. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this? Want to try and answer Victoria's question? Because I can jump in, but okay. All right, so my understanding of this is that, so we look at the David and Goliath story, and typically when it's taught to children or taught in general, it's saying David shouldn't have won against this giant, and it's this perception that it was this incredible miracle, and not to say that God's hand wasn't in it, because I also have that side of the story as well, but that when you dig into the story and you realize some of the disadvantages that Goliath had and the advantages that David had, from the outside it looks like there's no way he could have won. But the more you understand the situation, the more you might realize how much David had an advantage there over Goliath.
Yeah, he said that it's like he compared it to like if the Goliath has had a chance like 1 to million of 1,000% to win. So
so the situation is that So these two armies are kind of having a standoff here, and they're saying, okay, basically you bring your strongest fighter and we'll bring ours, and they'll have just the two of them will battle. And so they bring Goliath, who's this big giant, and from afar it looks like, oh my goodness, this is a huge warrior. There's no way anybody's going to be able to, from our army, our army doesn't have this kind of strength. There's not one person that can defeat this person. But then David comes and he has all of the confidence, all the confidence that, from God. And he says, I can battle him, but he is coming at it as, what do they call it? He uses his sling. So he's not doing hand-to-hand combat. He's not coming in and saying, I'm going to do hand-to-hand combat. In fact, King Saul or I think it's King Saul, wanted to put armor on him. And he said, no, I can't move in that armor. And so he says, I'm going to go down and I'm just going to fight him the way that I know how to fight him. And so he goes down, he uses his sling, and which was a very well-known weapon that can do a lot of damage for those who are well-trained. And David was well-trained. And so anyway, the situation, David wins off over Goliath, and the army with Goliath ends up retreating, and they are able to win. So basically it's just saying we didn't see the advantages that David actually knew he had. And the rest of them had this different perspective on the way that this fight needed to happen. But David had a different perspective on it that allowed him to triumph. Okay. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this?
I think his main point at the end is everybody strives for being successful by having a lot of money, being a very successful businessman, or having the best education. All those examples he brought up in his book. And I think at the end he encourages people to think about their lives and to think about different ways to reaching their goals in a different manner that they used to do.
Exactly.
I think this is what he was telling people at the very end.
Yes, good. That's one of those themes, and actually it kind of goes into this, the advantages of what we might think are disadvantages in our life. And we'll talk more really in depth about that concept, because I think it's a very, very powerful concept to get into. Oops, I'm getting a little feedback from, hold on. All right, we want to make sure all the audios are working. Welcome. Let's see, we have some more people showing up. Let's see, we might need to mute your microphone if it's causing some feedback there. So Abraha, welcome.
Thank you. I'm a little late. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We'll jump right in where we are, okay?
All right, thanks.
Did you have a chance to read the book, David and Goliath?
Me? No.
Okay. All right. So we'll get your perspective. There are a few of us here that few that haven't quite read the whole thing. So we'll get your perspective as we go along, just in life and some of the concepts we're talking about. All right, good. Okay, so some of the other themes, the advantages of disadvantages, and we'll talk about that. And then the disadvantages of advantages, basically saying what we perceive maybe as some disadvantages we have in life might in fact be a benefit to us, might be very powerful for us. Just like David, he had these perceived disadvantages, but really he saw it more as advantage. let's see, there's the inverted U curve, and if you haven't read the book, you might not understand that concept fully yet, but I'll do my best to explain. And then there's some other themes that have kind of come through in this story that you might have picked up on. All right, so in this, let's see, I'm not sure why there's a line there, but in this book, he uses lots of case studies and lots of examples that reinforce these themes or these ideas that he wanted to share. He talks about David and Goliath at the very beginning. He talks about the girls' basketball team. Did any of you get to that part with the girls' basketball team?
Yeah, I just read 2 chapters with Goliath and girls' basketball.
So you read that part?
Yeah, I did read that part.
Okay, good. So what were your thoughts about that girls' basketball team?
I thought it's thinking out of box and have confidence, willingness to do things will make a difference.
Yeah. So the situation, the girls' basketball team story that he uses talks about how there was this man who was coaching his daughter's basketball team, and they were young teenage girls playing basketball, and he was a software engineer, and he was from, I can't remember exactly where he was from. Does anybody remember? I'm going to say India. Okay, so he's from somewhere else. He's never played basketball. He doesn't really know the game, but he's there going to coach his daughter's team. And basically what happens is he looks at the game of basketball and he says, okay, my girls, they're not very skilled. They're not very strong. They're not very big. What's the strategy I'm going to use to help win? And basically they used a full court press as their strategy, which means that usually in basketball, one team kind of brings it to half court and then they play on one side of the court. His strategy was, we're going to play the whole court and keep them from even inbounding the ball, and which is much harder game than how it's typically played. Okay, it takes a lot of endurance, a lot of strength, a lot of stamina to be able to keep up. So he took this perceivably weak team and he ran them and ended up winning the national championship in this situation. So it was this man that's never played basketball before, and he ends up taking this, perceivably weak team to the nationals for their age. And so what they're saying basically is that he knew that the typical strategy wasn't going to work for him. So he had to change the strategy within the rules of the game of basketball and use it to his advantage. All right. So it was a really interesting case study of how that might work there. Let's see. Okay, Alishiva says she can't speak. She's at work, but she wants to make some comments to the chat. So I'll speak for her. She wrote in here. She says, I think the authors show that when you change the rules of the game, you have a chance to win, especially when you focus on your strengths. That's a really good point, is that sometimes we kind of think, oh, well, I'm not good I need to focus on my weaknesses and improve my weaknesses to be good in this situation. Like that team, the basketball team, they could have done a lot of shooting drills. They could have done a lot of rebounding drills. They could have done a lot to try and strengthen those other skills. But instead, he said, well, what are my strengths? We have these young girls, but they're really fast. And, and we can, and they can run. They can run and run and run. So let's use that to our advantage. And then Elise Shiva says, I played basketball in Mexico and my coach used the same strategy because we were the shorter team in the league. And I found that antidote anecdote very compelling. All right, excellent.
Anna, I think you said that you play basketball, right?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I don't remember where I read this information, but I think, yeah, in one of your mails that you sent us, I think
Yes.
you write that you like to play basketball in the weekends.
Yeah, so I actually play on Mondays and Fridays with a group of women. Sometimes some men come and play too, but so I related to this story very well. I understood exactly what they were talking about, and you do have to kind of maximize those strengths because I'm very short. I'm only 5 foot, almost 5'4", and so I have to use this strategy of just being able to run and run and run in my game as well. So yeah, good memory. Okay, so some of the other case studies, I mean, there were a lot of different examples that were used throughout the book. Were there any other case studies that kind of stood out to you? Like, I guess the question that I had next was, what was your favorite case study and why? For those of who were able to read the book this month. Is there any other of these stories? I might have missed a few too, but any of these stories that stood out to you?
Island.
Yeah. Sonia, go ahead.
Island. I think this word island is a big question about a lot of things that happen in the world, like violence. They couldn't agree about anything there.
Mm-hmm.
So they fight all the time. Mm-hmm. But now it's over.
Yeah, so it's during the World War II, is that what you're talking about?
Not World War II, but with Ireland and England.
Oh, yes.
Ireland, they fight with each other like one country fight with its Catholic and Protestant, two religion that fights each other.
Yeah. So in the fighting, when they're fighting each other, and the strategies that they're using during those battles,
and shouting and violence. Mm-hmm. It's awful.
Yes. Yes, so there were many examples in the book about, here, hold on. There were many examples in the book about conflicts, you know, violence and conflicts and the wars that are between different countries and the strategies that were used with these. And those who went to war and used this, just the traditional strategy, the stronger, you know, the perceived stronger army tended to defeat the weaker. But when you looked at those who used other tactics and used other strategies, kind of like the basketball team, where they looked at their strengths and said, how can we maximize those strengths? Then they were able to come in and have much more success with those. All right, excellent. Okay, so I'll just kind of talk about that perspective. One thing that I think was a great advantage or a great point made in this book is, let's look at our perspective. Let's look at how we view our situation. Do you view yourself as an underdog? And Ada and I were just talking about this before, is that as you're learning English as a second language, there is a bit of a disadvantage there, right? When you're speaking English with other native speakers, there is a perceived disadvantage there because of the language skills that you might have if you just compare straight across. But as we go through some of these concepts of perspective and kind of disadvantages and advantages, I want to bring to light some advantages that you have as a second language learner that can really be a strength to you when you're kind of up against other native speakers, I guess you could say. Okay, so this is the part of the book that really got me excited for all of our students here at Pronunciation Pro, is being able to look at the advantages that you have as a second language learner. Okay, let's see. Will someone read these quotes for me? Does somebody want to volunteer for these? Let's see. Go ahead.
The Israelis.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. What the Israelis saw from high on the ridge was an intimidating giant. In reality, the very thing that gave the giant size was alone the source of his greatest weakness. There is an important lesson in that for battles with all kinds of giants. The powerful and the strong are not always what they seem. Malcolm Gladwell, David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants.
Excellent. Okay, so as we go along, I want you to kind of think of yourself and your situation in your life and the giants that you might be facing. The giants that you might be facing of things that you perceive to be so, that seem to be stronger than you, or others that seem to be stronger than you, or situations that you're up against that you feel like you are the underdog, or that you might not have the strength to go against those giants in your life. Okay. All right. Who can read this one for me? Go ahead.
I'll try.
Yeah.
As it maybe matters how you feel about your abilities, your academic self-concept in the context of your classroom shapes your willingness to tackle challenge and finish difficult tasks. It's a crucial element in your motivation and confidence.
Okay, good. So again, we're talking about perspective, and the story that they bring up in this book that goes along with this is the fact that, and the term they use is a small fish in a big pond versus a big fish in a small pond. Have you guys heard that concept before?
The small fish eats the big one, or the big one eats the small one?
Okay, so yeah, that's a different analogy as far as the big fish eating the small fish and things like that. But the analogy that I'm talking about is, and the example they give is different universities. So say there's a very high achieving student who decides to go to Harvard, which is a very prestigious college in the United States. The second choice then is a smaller college that focuses more on the areas that she's interested in. So she's a science, she's very interested in science, and she gets accepted. And actually Harvard's not the school that she was accepted to, but
Rhode Island University.
What is it?
The Rhode Island University.
Rhode Island University?
Yeah.
Was that what it was? Okay, so a really prestigious university, Rhode Island University, and then kind of a good school, but a less prestigious school. And so she ends up going to this more prestigious school, but she's comparing herself to all these very, very top level learners. And so she perceives herself as stupid because she's struggling in the classes. So in that situation, she's a small fish in a big pond. Okay, she's just kind of this small fish trying to make her way in a very large pond. Versus if she went to a smaller school or a less prestigious school and was able to do better and was around people who were more matched to her ability, she would have had less of that perception of herself as being stupid. She would have maybe had more confidence and more of that perception as she compared herself to others around her. Okay, so it's really challenging this concept of perspective, is that is this concept of, you know, are you a little fish in a big pond comparing yourself to all these high achievers, or are you a big fish in a small pond comparing yourself to people who are more like your ability? Has anybody had this situation in their life where you have either been able to have more confidence because of because of your situation, or less confidence because of your surroundings?
I think every time we face with this situation, in the works, when I tried to enroll, in the end I enrolled to the university in Israel. It was difficult for me because it was a very high level of score in many exams, but I wanted to learn only in university, not in the college, because it's more prestige and it's cheaper than in the private college, and I didn't want to pay a lot of money for learning. So I tried to do my best. It was very very difficult, but I think it's now when I finished it more 10 years ago, I see that it was a better choice for me to do it, because I remember all the materials, and we learned we learned very well, and now I can teach in other students that only start to learn, because I remember after 10 years I remember all materials, and students who finished the college, not university, they forget all of all of they learn before the exams. After exams, they forget all materials. So, but it's not the same situation. But what I want to say that it was difficult for me, but I was happy. Of my choice. And you speak about another situation that the choice that people want to take, they are not happy with this.
Right. So it could go both ways. It could be a good thing to kind of be in that situation, because in your situation it challenged you. You had to overcome some really difficult situations, and because of that you were stronger, right?
And it was my second language. My native language is Russian, and I learned in Hebrew, but because of it I learned very well Hebrew. So now for me Hebrew and Russian is the same language.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, and that's why I'm happy with this.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so that's kind of goes down to another point, and another theme of the book is when you have to overcome some very difficult challenges. And actually, let's go into this section here. When you have to overcome some really challenging situations, it actually creates these advantages for you. So in the book, he talks about the idea of these advantages of disadvantages, and the situations that he brings up is dyslexia, so it's a learning disability, the loss of parents, and then there was this London bombing situation. But basically what he was saying is because of these challenges that people had to overcome, they had to live through, it ended up causing them to be much more successful in their lives and in their careers. Okay, so it created this, the result was this grit, that they were able to overcome a lot of their fears because they've already experienced such difficult situations that that they weren't scared of a lot of the typical things that people are scared of. They developed compensatory skills. So with dyslexia, they were talking about how it's a reading, it's a learning disability and they have a really difficult time reading. Well, because of that, they are really good listeners. Some of these people that have dyslexia are excellent listeners.
Mm-hmm.
And so these other skills that they develop have helped in their careers. It allows them to have different perspectives and that they're comfortable with hard things. So it sounds like that was more of your situation, is like you were putting into a hard situation, and because of that, it made you stronger.
Yeah. I think it gives to people the difficult situation that they win in the end. I think get them more confident, give them more confidence, and to face with another challenges in the future. And they start to believe in themselves, and it helps to go over another situations.
Absolutely. All right, good. Does anybody else have any situations that they can think of in their own lives that where a challenge that they've been up against has really made you stronger? Yeah, go ahead. Yep, Abraha.
Yeah, I don't know if it made me stronger, but I really been through the same analogy. Before 14 years, before I moved here to United States, back home in Ethiopia, I did my first degree in business management, and I felt like I was doing very well with a lot of confidence and kind of the big fish in probably kind of big fish in the small pond. When I moved here, I really, especially the first few years, I felt like a very, very small fish in a big bowl.
Yeah.
And I started a different career. I started nursing from all the way from scratch base. I was struggling with English language, and then still the accent, of course. And I finished my degree in nursing for about 3 years now. I'm still looking forward to continue as a nurse practitioner. But on my way, of course, when I look back now, the feeling is a little better. I kind of medium fish in a probably large pond.
Yeah.
Still, maybe a little better than the small fish. But I still feel medium fish, and I'm looking forward to be the at least not large, but a little better fish, kind of survival, and a little become more confident, more success. I think that will take eventually to that end. And I figure that out. I'm still having a hard time making myself be understood by others, and a little bit of also difficulty understanding some people who may speak so fast or a little different accents from different parts of the United States. Especially, I work with elderly, and elderly, it makes it a little difficult.
Yes.
So that's how I really feel of this. But otherwise, you put it in a very, very nice analogy. I felt so bad. I actually been saying to myself, I moved from a place where I used to be smart to be or to feel like as a stupid.
Well, and nothing changed except your environment, right? You didn't change. It's not like all of a sudden you went from being smart to being, less smart, but the way that you perceived your environment caused you to feel that way. So it's interesting because you, like you were just talking about, you're in the middle of that challenge. Right? So you're at the beginning, you were saying I was a tiny, tiny, small fish in a very big pond. But now you can see how your skills are growing and you're getting better and you're starting to grow yourself and your environment. Because if you keep, and this is an interesting kind of analogy, if you keep a big fish in a small bowl, it's not going to grow. That's maxed out, right? You're not going to grow anymore. That fish is not going to grow anymore. But if you put that same fish into a bigger bowl, it will start to grow. Well, it depends on the fish, I guess, but
Yeah.
but the analogy is there, right?
Right.
So you're in that situation right now, and I would actually assume that most of you are probably in this situation as well in your personal development and your growth, because of you're here today. You're here today and you're doing what you're doing right now. So as we're talking about these advantages, I kind of switched from, so like in this situation, we have, you know, these situations where dyslexia, loss of parents, all of that created grit and overcoming fear and some compensatory skills and these different perspectives, and, you know, being comfortable with hard things. So in the book, they talked about this. Well, let's use that same situation with learning English as a second language. My experience with working with so many of you is that those same results are happening for you. You've put yourself in a situation where you might feel like that small fish in a big pond, because of your language skills. You're really battling this, you know, improving your English as a second language or third or fourth language, depending on your situation. But from my experience working with so many of you, is that it produces grit. It produces that comfortable with being uncomfortable, comfortable with hard things. I've seen our students overcome that fear and start talking more and getting out of their comfort zone. I've seen compensatory skills. I've seen how, you know, maybe your language skills aren't as strong as your coworkers or people around you, but you've found ways to compensate. Either your technical skills in your profession are really, really strong, or you've figured out different ways to compensate for maybe lower language skills. But and the way I kind of think about it is that the advantage that you have as a second language learner is you have all these things: grit, overcoming fear, you know, these compensatory skills. You've had to work harder and do more to achieve your language skills and what you've done. Like Victoria was saying, she went to a school and had to do it in a completely different language. And not only did that language skill, you know, she had to, that is a significant disadvantage to have to learn with other people who might be natives in that language. But because of that, she was able to be stronger and do more. So you build all these qualities up, and at the same time start, you know, so you're kind of with your peers, I guess, other colleagues, native speakers, and you kind of perceive yourself as lower because their language skills are higher. But as you improve your language skills, I mean, they're not going to improve their language skills much. They're not actively working on that side of things. But you, as you improve your language skills and add on top of all of this grit and compensatory skills and all the things, to me, when I see our students, I see them as having so much more advantage in life and in your different situations than many around you. Anyway, that's my soapbox. What I like is I get so passionate about this because I think that there is some perception there that needs to be altered. Seeing those disadvantages and seeing, wow, they might actually be advantages for me.
Yes, I didn't think about it in this way, but now when you show me the really advantage of this, now I understand more, and thanks for motivation.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. And that's what's so motivating to me as I work with our students, is that I see all these things, you know, all these advantages that you have, and And so once we kind of get those language skills up to what they need to be, and improving on those, I see so many just like take off because they have all of these underlining skills and qualities that make them have those advantages in their situation, in their work environment, in their careers, in their life. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this? Carmen, do you have any kind of Sonia, go ahead.
I thought going where I learn and be with you, I learn all the time, because if not, I will not learn. So I understand the whole thing with everything to learn.
Excellent, Sonia. And Sonia, you're a great example to us of just, I mean, you've been so active in this program and putting in so much work to just continue to improve and refine that English. I'm so impressed with your commitment and your consistency. It's awesome. You've done a fantastic job. Great. Oh, Choi, I see that. Let's see. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I can personalize that into my situation really. Once you are aware of your weaknesses or something that you have to work on it, maybe the progress will be slow, and that's why you have to also add skills or go for higher possible stages. In my case now, that's why I want to continue on more education, because I believe that you have to be competitive anyways. And I know that if we compare myself and some other people, native language speakers, compare for the same position, unless I compensate somehow the weaknesses that I may have, I may not be able to win the competition. They have such comparative advantage over me. I have to make it for that up. I believe that, and then I always believe going higher than what they have, especially using your comparative advantage, and then also side by side work on your weaknesses. Even if it may be slow, you may get there or improve or something. So that's pretty much what I experience almost daily.
Yes, and I like how you say you experience it almost daily, whereas your native speaking counterparts aren't having to fight that hard every day, right?
That's right.
You have to fight so much harder in your situation and all of your situations than others have to. And with all that fight, you have to understand that there's growth and there's strength that's being created there, which is to your advantage, right? So you have to remember that, because I think that our confidence can kind of come down, it can wane because we're comparing ourselves, but you do have to acknowledge the fact that the growth and the strength that you are experiencing as you go through these hard things.
That's for sure. Unless you give up, unless you are not aware of your weaknesses, that's another thing. But once you are aware of it, and then once you are decided to go forward, that's pretty much what you have to do.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I'd call on all of you by name, but your names aren't popping up in front of your video, so you have to just kind of speak up. Go ahead. I see.
Cindy?
Yeah, Cindy, there we go. And speak up loud, because I think your microphone is a little
Can you hear me now?
quiet. Yep, so speak up real loud.
So it's my real experience in life. Like when I study the GRE test with the Kaplan, I felt like I didn't know a lot of vocabulary. So I just spend my time to study 2,000 or 3,000 more new words. So when I study in class with my friend, I feel like some who I know, they didn't know it. So I mean, like as a ESL student, it sounds like a disadvantage, but in the class, it's give me more motivation to study more words and better.
Excellent. I love that. Yeah, what could start off as a disadvantage, you're creating that work ethic and those habits that allow you to keep growing, and you just keep at it. And I would be surprised if you don't continue to pass up some of those peers that you have.
Cindy, nursing too?
Right?
Are you a nursing? You're talking about Kaplan. That's my favorite.
Now, I studied GRE for the graduate school.
Oh, okay.
When I studied that, but yeah, and it's have a lot of words, so I just feel scary. Oh, I'm not native American, so I just keep spend all my time to study. But when I go to the class, I feel so surprised that they American, but they don't know a lot of vocabulary words too. So sometimes you don't know something at first. It might be an advantage.
Excellent. Good example, Cindy. Good example. Yeah, and some other, just thinking in terms of these advantages, really take into consideration your background, your values, that humility. That's what I love about our students, is they're so teachable. You're all so teachable. And when you have an attitude and a mindset that you have more to learn, that there's more to learn, and that you are, you're in that attitude of like, oh, I don't know it yet. And so I'm just going to have this attitude of lifelong learning. You develop that over your life. And our students are some of the most humble, teachable people I've ever met. And it's beautiful because the growth is amazing when that is there. There's also the cultural understanding and the respect that you've developed through your experience, the compassion that you've experienced in being in a situation where you feel like an outsider. You have much more compassion for those around you who might feel the same. And then also the simplicity of language. Now, I see a lot of native speakers or even non-native speakers that feel like they need to use very grandiose language. Whereas sometimes simple is better. If you just, some of our students, I love the way they explain things because it's just straightforward, it's simple, and it gets to the point quicker than some of the way, and I'm going to include myself in that situation. I use more words than I probably need to in explaining myself, whereas some of my students, they're good at just getting to the point. Are there any other kind of advantages that you have popped into your head as you have thought through this scenario?
Yeah, I have one.
Carmen, go ahead. Yeah.
I teach German, my native language, to adult people.
Oh, good.
And having studied English grammar, and now I'm trying to improve my pronunciation. This makes it much easier for me to teach my own language to other people.
Excellent.
Because you would think about the differences, and you would think about how to explain topics like grammar topics, or even the differences in pronunciation. Helps me a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good point, because you're looking at language in a very different way than someone who hasn't had that experience.
Even if you have people right at the beginning, they pronounce words wrong, so that the words have a completely different meaning. This is sometimes the funny part of it.
Yeah. Interesting. Victoria, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I have the same situation that now I'm teaching people Hebrew, and I start to understand them more better now than I learn English by myself, and I participate in your program. So I understand that people I understand them better than it was before, because I thought that they should know what I know, and that I should be patient to them, speak with them slowly, and to back to the same material sometimes, and so now it's easier for me to do my job.
Yes.
And explain Hebrew to people who want to learn it.
Excellent. Okay, I love it. I love the spillover, because when you're growing and you're improving and you're looking to expand your skills and developing yourself, there's such a spillover into other areas of your life where you need that grit and that strength and that consistency and that understanding and that growth. It's an amazing thing to see what all of you are doing and how you're applying that all in your lives. So I congratulate all of you for what
Thank
you guys
you.
are doing. It's quite amazing. All right. Well, good. I think this has just been a great discussion. And I think it's something that I'm just going to kind of wrap it up there, because I think that this concept that we've been talking about of using what we think might be a disadvantage, and in our situation, in our situation here at Pronunciation Pro, you're here working on something that you perceive as a disadvantage, a weakness, something that needs to be improved. And while that is true, like there needs to be continued learning and growth and improvement in your language skills, you also need to not forget the advantages that are there for you, and really think about that and think, what are the advantages that I've seen in this process, and what advantages do I have, and how can I look at the game or the competition of life and in your career and things, and look at it with a different perspective. How can we view it differently? How can we go about the game in a unique way that maximizes your strengths and helps you really, just maximize those strengths instead of just focusing on the weakness. Yes, we do need to improve weaknesses, but you do have some incredible strengths because of what you've been through already. All right. Does anybody have any kind of closing remarks that they want to add?
I would, instead of calling it disadvantages or weaknesses, I really would like to call it challenges. And then there is this saying that any challenge that doesn't break you or help you grow stronger. Mm-hmm. So that's the way I think we can see it. It is a challenge.
Yeah.
Most of the life challenges can be worked out, and it's that challenge to be worked out rather than disadvantage or weakness.
I love it. I love it, because the perception with weakness is that it's fixed, that we can't do anything about it, right? But the perception of challenge is just, it's just an obstacle. It's just something to overcome. And it has that concept of like movement. We're doing something towards that. I like that a lot. Thank you. Thank you.
You made it even more clear.
I love it. I'm going to use that now. Weakness, we're going to throw that out the window. It's challenges now. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope this was helpful for you. And so we're going to go ahead. I'll be announcing the next book club book here in the next few days. And get a hold of the book and read it, so that I think that it just expands our discussion and expands what the way that we can kind of dive into these concepts when you have that background in the book. But today has been still so awesome, and thank you all for showing up and coming and participating. And
thank you.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
Yep. I wish you all a great day. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.